How long has it been since you felt completely betrayed? For me, it only took one night. I found out that the woman I thought I would spend my life with wasn't just lying to me. She was cheating on me with the one person I never imagined would hurt me, my own dad. I can still feel the rush of emotions when I walked in and saw them together. The woman I loved and trusted, and the man who raised me, together in a way that shattered my entire world. How did it all happen? How did I miss the signs? This isn't just a story of love and loss. It's a raw, painful journey of betrayal and broken trust. What happens when the two people you thought you could trust the most completely destroy you? I'm about to share the truth, and it's going to hit harder than you can imagine. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means the world to us, and we truly appreciate it. Thanks. Before everything changed, I thought I had it all. I had a girlfriend who was my best friend, someone I trusted with my heart, and a dad who had always been my role model. Life was simple, but it felt right. My girlfriend and I had our little routine, endless conversations late into the night, laughing over the smallest things, planning our future together. She was the kind of person who knew how to make the darkest days brighter, and I thought we were unstoppable. We had this understanding, this bond, that made everything feel like it was meant to be. And then there was my dad, my hero. He wasn't just a father, he was my guide, my mentor. I could always count on him to help me make the right choices, to steer me through the rough patches in life. We had so many great memories, working on projects together, sharing stories over dinner, and spending weekends just hanging out. I admired him more than anyone else in my life, and I trusted him completely. He was the man I looked up to, and the one I believed would always have my back. Looking back, everything felt perfect. I thought I had everything anyone could want: love, trust, and a future filled with hope. I believed in the good in people, especially in the ones closest to me. But that was before the betrayal, before I learned that the people I loved and trusted the most were capable of breaking me in ways I never saw coming. Life was full of warmth and safety then, and I never could have imagined how quickly it could all turn into something unrecognizable. It started with small things. At first, I barely noticed them, little moments that seemed insignificant on their own, but looking back, all of them were red flags. She was always so open with me, telling me about her day, sharing her thoughts, no matter how trivial. But gradually, her responses became shorter, less detailed. When I'd ask her about something we usually laughed about, her eyes would flicker with hesitation, and she'd give me a quick, forced smile. It was subtle, but I felt the shift, and it gnawed at me. Her texts, those once constant reminders of her affection, started to slow down. It wasn't the long conversations we used to have at all hours. Now, she would take hours to reply to a simple, "How's your day going?" If I called her, it sometimes felt like she was rushing me off the phone, like she had something to hide, but I convinced myself it was nothing. She was just busy, I thought. She had a lot on her plate with work, with friends. Of course, I could understand that, but deep down, I felt this subtle distance forming between us. It wasn't a big thing, just a shift in tone, a moment of quietness that didn't seem to fit her usual energy. Then there was a sudden secrecy. She became protective of her phone. I'd glance over while she was texting, and she'd quickly pull it closer to her, almost like she was hiding something. It didn't make sense. Why would she need to hide her phone from me? We had always been transparent, always shared everything. But I pushed those thoughts down, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a phase. I didn't want to doubt her, didn't want to see something that wasn't there. One evening, she came home later than usual. She told me she was out with friends, but when I asked who, she hesitated, and then gave me names I didn't recognize. I remember feeling a knot in my stomach. I didn't question her, though. I trusted her, right? I didn't want to be the guy who was insecure, constantly checking up on her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There were nights when I'd try to make plans with her, and she'd cancel last minute, citing vague reasons, things that didn't make sense, like her being too tired or needing space. I'd let it slide, thinking I was overreacting. There was also this strange change in her tone when we talked about our future. She'd always been excited about it before, always talking about plans we had for the next few months, the trips we wanted to take, our goals. But now, when I'd bring it up, she would change the subject quickly, almost as if she was avoiding the conversation altogether. It felt like she was slipping away, but I couldn't figure out why. The love, the connection, the closeness, it seemed like it was still there in small moments, but it was becoming harder and harder to feel it. And then there was the way she looked at me sometimes, like she was seeing me for the first time, like I wasn't the person she had been with for so long. Her gaze would drift, distant and unreadable, and for a brief moment, I'd feel like a stranger to her. I thought it was just me being paranoid, maybe reading too much into things. After all, we had a strong relationship, didn't we? I didn't want to admit that there could be something wrong. But deep inside, a voice was starting to scream at me that something was happening, that I was missing something huge. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that I was being unreasonable. But with every small change, every inconsistency in her behavior, that voice grew louder. I found myself questioning every moment, second-guessing every conversation, wondering where things had shifted, and if I could ever get back the person I thought I knew so well. I didn't want to admit it, but in my gut, I knew I was being left behind. It was a normal evening, or so I thought. I had no idea that everything was about to unravel. I had been feeling more and more like something was wrong lately. But I never imagined it would come to this. I walked into the house, expecting to find my girlfriend sitting on the couch, maybe watching TV or scrolling through her phone. Instead, what I saw shattered every ounce of trust one had left. There they were, my dad and my girlfriend, sitting so close together on the couch, their heads tilted toward each other in conversation. But it wasn't just the closeness. It was the way they were looking at each other. The way my dad's hand was casually resting on her thigh. The way she was leaning into him. A smile on her lips that didn't belong. It was as if everything I thought I knew about them, about my relationship with both of them, had been a lie. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest as my mind tried to process what I was seeing. I want to call out their names, demand an explanation, but nothing came out. I felt paralyzed, like my body had betrayed me in that moment. My dad, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world, and the woman I had loved, who I thought I would spend my life with, the people I had believed would never hurt me, were sitting there, so comfortable with each other, like nothing was wrong. When they saw me standing there, I could see the panic flash in their eyes. My dad quickly pulled his hand back, almost like he was caught in a moment of weakness. But my girlfriend, her face twisted with guilt, with fear, slowly stood up, almost as if to shield herself from my anger. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I couldn't hear anything. All I could feel was the blood rushing in my ears, my chest tightening with a pain so sharp it almost made me collapse. I felt a wave of nausea rise within me. The confusion, the anger, it all surged up at once. How could this be happening? How could she, the person I trusted more than anything, betray me with him, my own father, the man who had raised me, the man who had always been my hero? My whole life, I had looked up to him. And now, in an instant, everything I knew to be true was a lie. I wanted to scream, to shout at both of them, to make them understand the depth of the betrayal. But my voice was trapped in my throat. I could only stand there, my mind trying to process what I had just seen, what I had just discovered. My body was shaking, my knees weak, as if the ground beneath me was slipping away. The room felt too small, too suffocating. I couldn't escape the feeling of being trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like hours. I couldn't look at them. I didn't want to see their faces, didn't want to see the guilt written all over my girlfriend's, didn't want to see the shame in my dad's eyes. I didn't want any part of this moment. I wanted to go back to the way things were before, to erase the image of them together from my mind. But it was too late. It was burned into my memory forever. The anger came next, a raging fire that started in my chest and spread to every part of my body. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of it, like the betrayal was suffocating me. I didn't even know who to be angrier with, her or him. He had always told me how much he loved me, how much he cared about my happiness. She had promised me the same, swearing that we were in this together, that I was the only one for her. And now here they were, both of them, wrapped up in a lie so monstrous, so unforgivable. And then came the heartbreak. The overwhelming realization that everything I thought was real, everything I had built my life on, was a lie. The weight of the love I had given her, the trust one had placed in him. Everything felt so hollow now. I felt like I was drowning, struggling to breathe through the suffocating feeling of betrayal. I wanted to lash out, to destroy the both of them for what they had done. But I couldn't. My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the pain, the shock, the disbelief. I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't know how to process a betrayal from two people I had loved more than anything in the world. In that moment, the world around me disappeared. All I could feel was the devastation, the crushing weight of everything falling apart. I was alone in that room, even though they were both standing there, watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction, some kind of forgiveness. But all I could do was sit there in silence, my heart shattered into a million pieces, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed felt like an endless blur, a haunting wave of confusion, anger, and sorrow. I had hoped, deep down, that what I had seen wasn't real, that it was some terrible misunderstanding, a nightmare I would wake up from. But reality kept slamming me in the face with its harsh truths, and the emotional weight of it all sank deeper into my bones with every passing hour. I couldn't escape the betrayal, couldn't outrun the images of my girlfriend and my dad together, the lies they'd woven, the trust they'd shattered. The hardest part was trying to make sense of it all. How could this happen? How could the two people I loved most in the world, the people I thought I could trust above anyone else, do this to me? I couldn't find an answer, and that lack of clarity was suffocating. Every time I thought I was starting to piece things together, new questions arose, and the anger would flare up again. I couldn't understand how they both had hidden this from me, how they had carried on like nothing was wrong. How could they lie to me so effortlessly, knowing the damage they were causing? My mind was constantly running in circles, replaying moments from the past, trying to see if there had been signs I missed, if I had been too blind to see the truth. But it was pointless. I would never get those answers. When it came to my dad, the man who had always been my rock, the one I turned to when things were tough, everything had changed. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. His betrayal cut deeper than anything my girlfriend had done, because he had been my mentor, my guide through life. He had raised me to be a man of integrity, to be honest and trustworthy. And yet, here he was, betraying me in the most intimate way possible. The man I had admired had broken me. Every time I saw him, I saw the same person, but it wasn't the same. It was like I was looking at a stranger, someone I could no longer trust, someone who had shattered the foundation of our relationship without a second thought. The sadness hit me hard, too. It wasn't just the anger that consumed me. It was a profound sense of loss. I had lost the future I thought I had with my girlfriend, the dreams of a life we'd built together. But I had also lost the father I had spent my life admiring. There was an emptiness that lingered in every part of me, and no matter how much I tried to push it away, it never left. I was grieving for the person I thought my dad was, grieving for the love I had given my girlfriend, and grieving for the trust one had lost in both of them. My relationship with her was destroyed, but my relationship with my dad was just as broken. Every time I saw him, I felt a mixture of disgust, betrayal, and pain. I couldn't even bring myself to speak to him, not without the weight of everything crashing over me. The silence between us was unbearable. It wasn't just that I couldn't forgive him. It was that I didn't know if I ever could. The man who had always been my role model was now a symbol of everything that was wrong in my life, everything that had been torn apart. The anger inside me was like a constant fire, burning so hot that I couldn't escape it. There were moments when I would think I was over it, that I could start healing, but the memories would come rushing back. Of her smile, of him laughing at my jokes, of the love I thought was real. And then the anger would flare up again. I wanted to confront them, to make them feel the same hurt they had caused me, to make them understand how deeply they had scarred me. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't fix what had been broken. The betrayal was so deep, so personal, that nothing could make it right. But the hardest part of all was the feeling of being utterly alone. I couldn't talk to anyone about it, not in a way that would make sense to them. How could I explain to my friends, to anyone, that my dad and my girlfriend had both betrayed me? How could I admit to anyone that I was lost, that I didn't know who I was anymore? I felt like an outsider in my own life, like everything I had believed in had crumbled in front of me, and I was left to pick up the pieces, a shattered existence. The emotional fallout of all of this left me exhausted. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My mind raced constantly, but I never felt at peace. Some days, I felt like I was drowning in the weight of everything. Other days, I was numb, completely disconnected from everything around me. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I even wanted it anymore. The person I had been before, the trusting, hopeful version of myself, was gone, replaced by someone bitter, someone broken, someone who couldn't fathom how to fix the mess they were left with. I felt like I was drowning in grief, in anger, in the aftermath of betrayal that seemed to have no explanation. And through it all, there was this gnawing emptiness in my chest. The pain didn't go away. The confusion didn't stop. The anger didn't fade. I was still standing there, trying to figure out what was left of me after everything had been torn apart. The process of trying to heal from the devastation my girlfriend's betrayal with my dad caused me was, in a word, excruciating. I thought that time would be the answer, that eventually I would wake up one day and feel like myself again. But healing was not a straight path. It wasn't something I could just decide to do and then move on with my life. It was messy, painful, and filled with moments of doubt, frustration, and self-loathing. The first few months after everything fell apart were a blur. I felt disconnected from reality, like I was floating above my own life, unable to touch anything with meaning. I tried to push the pain away, to bury the anger deep inside, but it never stayed buried for long. Every interaction, every new relationship, whether it was with friends, family, or even strangers, felt tainted by what happened. I couldn't trust anyone. Not my dad, not my ex-girlfriend, not even the people who had stood by me. Every time I opened up to someone, a part of me was terrified they would hurt me too, that they would betray me in ways I couldn't predict. I knew I needed help, but even that was hard to admit. I didn't want to talk to anyone about how broken I felt. I was embarrassed by how weak I seemed, how easily my life had crumbled. But eventually, the weight of everything was too much to carry on my own, and I reached out for help. I found a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal, someone who could help me untangle the mess inside my mind. At first, I resisted. I didn't believe anyone could help me fix what had been broken, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to fix it. It felt easier to stay angry, to stay in that place of bitter disbelief than to face the truth. But slowly, as I began to open up in therapy, I started to realize that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning how to live with it, to rebuild myself from the wreckage. The first breakthrough came in understanding that my anger wasn't the enemy. For so long, I thought that being angry was holding me back, that I was letting the betrayal define me. But my therapist helped me see that anger was a natural part of the healing process. It was okay to be angry. It was okay to feel hurt and to want justice, even if that justice would never come. The difficult part was learning to channel that anger in healthier ways. I had spent so long letting the rage consume me, using it as a shield to keep the hurt at bay. But once I started confronting it, once I allowed myself to feel the full depth of the pain, I began to feel lighter, even if it was only for brief moments. There were days when I felt like I was making progress, when the fog would lift for a while, and I could breathe again. I would talk to people, start to trust a little bit, and maybe even laugh. But just as quickly, the darkness would return. There were nights when I would sit in silence, replaying betrayal in my head over and over, wondering how it all happened. And then there were the days when I'd try to reach out to my dad, hoping that somehow we could fix things. But each time I saw him, I was reminded of how much he had shattered me, how deeply I had been wounded. Every interaction with him felt like a battle between wanting to heal and wanting to push him away, to never see him again. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. Trust, I realized, was the hardest thing to rebuild. I couldn't simply erase the wounds that had been carved so deep into me. And while I tried to allow myself to trust again, I found it impossible to do so with the same openness I had before. Even with my friends, even with people who had nothing to do with the betrayal, I couldn't shake the feeling of always being on edge, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wanted to believe that not everyone would hurt me, that there were still people in the world who wouldn't betray my trust, but my mind kept pulling me back to that moment of discovery, the crushing reality of what had happened, and I couldn't stop myself from wondering if I was just waiting for the next lie to be revealed. Part of the process of healing also meant confronting my own sense of self-worth. The betrayal had made me feel unlovable, unworthy. It was hard to imagine a future where I felt secure in my own skin. But through self-reflection and therapy, I started to see that the betrayal wasn't my fault. It didn't mean I was weak or that I deserved to be hurt. I began working on rebuilding my sense of identity outside of my relationship with my dad and my ex-girlfriend. It was difficult, though. The emotional scars from their actions made it feel like I was starting from scratch. Who was I if I couldn't trust the people closest to me? Who was I without the belief that love and loyalty were the foundation of every relationship? Over time, I began to make small strides. I spent time focusing on my passions, reconnecting with friends I had drifted away from, and taking care of my physical health. I started to realize that healing wasn't just an emotional process. It required taking care of my body, too. I would go on runs, do yoga, and eat better. Little by little, I started to feel like I was putting the pieces of my life back together. But the journey was never linear. There were still days where the grief would hit me hard, where I would want to throw everything away and hide from the world. There were moments where I would wonder if I would ever be truly happy again, if I would ever be able to trust someone completely without that nagging fear in the back of my mind. The weight of what had happened would never leave me completely. But I started to learn how to live with it, how to carry the pain without letting it define me. Healing from betrayal of both my girlfriend and my dad was a slow process, a painful one, but through therapy, through self-reflection, and through allowing myself to grieve, I began to rebuild. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but I began to see that it was possible to heal, that it was possible to trust again, and that I could find peace even after everything had fallen apart. This betrayal has changed me in ways I never could have imagined. It's left a permanent mark on my heart, a scar that will always remind me of how fragile trust can be, how even the closest people can hurt you when you least expect it. The person I was before, someone who believed in the goodness of people, someone who believed that love and loyalty were the foundations of every relationship, no longer exists in the same form. I'm not the same person I was before the betrayal, and I don't think I ever will be. The hardest part, though, has been the way it affected my ability to trust others. I'm more guarded now, more cautious. When people get close, I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's as if a part of me is always looking for signs of betrayal, as if I'm bracing myself for the inevitable hurt. I can't just give my trust away freely anymore. That innocence I once had, the openness I felt in my relationships, is gone. Trust is no longer something I give easily. It has to be earned. And even then, there's a part of me that remains suspicious, watching for cracks, wondering if I'm about to be deceived again. But even with the damage done, there are lessons I've learned along the way. I've learned that love, while beautiful, is also fragile and can be broken by the people we least expect. I've learned that relationships require more than just feelings. They need respect, communication, and most importantly, honesty. I've learned that loyalty isn't something to be assumed. It's something that has to be shown through actions. And perhaps the hardest lesson of all is that we can't control the actions of others. We can only control how we respond to them, how we move forward, and how we heal. In the end, the most important thing I've learned is that healing from betrayal isn't about forgetting or erasing the pain. It's about understanding that the pain doesn't define you. It's about accepting that life moves forward, even when we're stuck in our grief. I've come to realize that in order to truly move on, I have to forgive, not for them, but for me. Holding on to anger, to bitterness, only keeps me stuck in the past. Forgiveness doesn't mean I condone what happened. It means I refuse to let it control my life any longer. Self-healing is a long road, and it's not always linear. There are days when the weight of everything comes crashing back, when the memories of betrayal are too strong to ignore. But each day, I get a little stronger, a little more capable of letting go. And maybe, just maybe, one day I'll be able to trust again, not just others but myself. The key, I've learned, is to never stop moving forward, to keep pushing to the pain and into the possibility of something better. Because while betrayal leaves a mark, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can just be the beginning of a new chapter, where healing and growth take center stage. While betrayal leaves a mark, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can just be the beginning of a new chapter, where healing and growth take center stage. If you found something in this story that resonates with you, or if you're on your own journey of healing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're not alone in this, and together we can continue to move forward.